All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to do another example. You remember we've done the Farmer Ghana Limited example. We've done another practical example where there are more variables. I'm a Benyuado example. We are going to do a third example, probably the final one, on how to formulate it also in Excel, and how to solve it in Excel, and how to do some sensitivity analysis of the whole thing in Excel. So that's what we are going to do today. So this is the story that we have. We are going to formulate this information. The Biggs department store chain hires an advertising company to determine the types of an amount of advertisement it should invest in for its stores. Now there are three types of advertising: TV and radio commercials and newspaper ads. The BDSC desires to know the number of each type of advert it should buy in order to maximize exposure. That word maximize exposure is very important. It is estimated that each ad or commercial will have the following potential audience, and for each audience there is an associated cost. So if you look at the data set, let me show you the data set. This first column is the type of advert. Okay. And the type of adverts include TV adverts. So TV will reach 20,000 people. That is the number of people who are going to be reached. It is projected that TV will cost 15,000 cedis. Radio will reach 12,000 people and will cost 6,000. The budget for newspaper is 4,000. And that is because it will reach 9,000 people. Now, as I'm looking at this, yours is to start thinking about what is going to be the decision variables and what is going to be the objective function coefficient. Now, the firm must consider the following resource and mix constraint. Now, what is a resource constraint? A resource constraint is a constraint that has to do with a limitation set on a particular resource. But a mixed constraint has to do with the combinations of the decision variables that are needed. So maybe half of the first decision variables will give you the second and the third decision variable. That's a mixed constraint. Now in this context, we are told that the budget limit for advert is 100,000. The budget limit is 100,000. Now, what is that? Well, the budget limit has to do with the total cost. Okay. That is the total cost of the whole thing. And the total cost was given to us here. And so instead of saying the total cost is 100,000, says the budget limit is 100,000. The TV station has a time available for 4 commercials. Available means that it's on the right hand side. The radio station has time available for 10 commercials. Newspaper has space. Newspaper will not have time available, but it will have space available for 7 ads. And then finally, we are told that the advertising agency has time and space available for producing no more than a total of 15 commercials and or advertisement. The first thing to do is to formulate a linear programming problem for this advertising problem. How do you go about that? Well, the first thing you want to do is to be able to identify the variable, the decision variables. Once you get the decision variables, then you know exactly what you're doing. So, who can tell me what are the decision variables? Now, normally when you're dealing with the decision variables, we always say let x1 be that, x2 be that, x3 be that, x4 be that, depending on the number of decision variables. So, if you have taken your time and thought through what are the decision variables, tell us what the decision variables are. Morrison, you can unmute yourself and then answer it. What is the decision variable?
All right, hello doc. They are the number of adverts to buy.
Again,
They are the number of adverts to buy.
adverts to buy.
Yes, please.
Adverts to buy. Well, that word to buy is killing me. Okay, let's see whether it to be practical. Okay, so you mute yourself. Amana, go ahead.
Doc, the decision variables would be the three types of advertising, which is television, radio, and
Be
newspaper.
specific. Take them one by one. Let X1 be what? Let X2 be what? Instead of that.
So let X1 be the number of the television, X2 be radio, commercials,
So
and
that's what
X.
you would have written, eh? Let X1 be television, let X2 be radio, let X3 be newspaper. You see, that's why I wanted you to write it that way, because just saying it is not that simple. Okay? Because you have to say it in such a way that it would make, sense to the ears. So, I think I'll combine what the two of you indicated. So the first thing you're going to just do is this. Okay. So we're going to have this as let X1 be the number of TV commercials. That's how you gotta be. The number of TV commercials, not X1 be TV, no, but the number of TV commercials. X2 be the number of radio commercials. Of course, when you're writing, you write the full names. And X3 is a number of, you cannot say the newspaper is a commercial. So that one, it was very specific. It says newspaper ads. Okay, the number of newspaper ads. So that is what it has to be. That is exactly what it has to be. All right. So that is how you have to define. You got to learn how to define your decision variables, because you will do this. You will be always dealing with these decision variables. And it's important that you master how to handle these decision variables. Okay. Let me just go back and show you what you've just done. So you've just indicated a number of decision variables. Usually the next thing to do is to write your objective function. Write your objective function. Now, before you write objective function, you need to understand this story. See, most of the time when you don't understand the story, you won't miss it. What is the goal of this BDSC company? What is their goal? What is their objective? And what does that mean? I want you to tell me, what is their objective? First of all, what is their objective? Yes, Abibatu.
Please, is to maximum exposure.
Their objective to maximize exposure. So what does that mean? It's okay, that's fine. What does that mean? In principle, what does that mean? What do you mean by exposure? What does that really mean practically? If you were to tell somebody that this company, their goal is to maximize exposure, what does that mean in practical sense? Exposure to a vaccine? What does that mean here? You need to understand in principle. Eunice, please mute yourself. This is for Eunice.
Sir, please, they have to invest in.
You have to what?
It means that TV they have to invest in.
All right. I think you are yet to think about what it really means. So you can mute yourself. And I think it's hard to, you want to mute yourself consistently, okay? You want to mute yourself consistently. So that is not correct, Eunice. Who can tell me what it means? Janet.
Oh, please. maximize exposure is to gain is in the long run they want to gain more customers and to increase their profits level.
Maximize what?
They maximizing their exposure in the long run is to gain more customer attention, which will result in profits maximization.
So what do you mean by maximize exposure? See, you guys keep using the word. Okay, use okay, mute yourself. Okay, what does it mean to maximize exposure? And this is what it means. You are increasing the number of mute yourself. You are increasing the number of you are increasing the number of people who are going to be able to see the advert, to see the commercial. Okay, so you are increasing the number of people, but you see, technically they can't increase the number of people. Okay. But they can if they do more adverts, because the more adverts you do, the more people are going to be able to see what you have. So that is it. That is why the decision variable is the number of that particular advertisement to do. If we do 2 commercials, okay, radio commercials, and if we do 20 radio commercials, obviously the 20 radio commercials will have more exposure. Okay, people will be much more exposed. So the likelihood of the number increasing is higher. Okay. So know the difference between, so the exposure here is dealing with the total number of people who are going to see relative to the advertisement. It is a combination. The total number of, you are maximizing total number of people plus the number of adverts. That is exposure. Okay, so the number of adverts that you do, okay, and the number of people who see the advert, that is the exposure. And you want to understand this. Okay. So on the basis of this, if we are to write the objective function, okay, which of these 2 columns are we going to use to represent our coefficient, our objective coefficient? Is it the exposure here or the cost? There is no doubt that it's going to be the exposure. It's going to be the exposure. So how do we write the objective function? The objective function, how do we write it? When it's going to be Z max, okay, it's going to be Z max equal to the 20,000 x1 plus the next one was 12,000 x2, which is for the radio, and the next one was 9,000 x3, which is the newspaper ad. So this becomes our objective function. And what I mean by the coefficient are the numbers. So the numbers attached to each axis is a coefficient, and the x's are the decision variables. So you always know that we always multiply the coefficient times the decision variable. Okay. So each coefficient is always multiplying a decision variable. It's important to know because those are the linear programming terminologies. All right. So this is now subject to some constraints. So we are now left with formulating our constraints. Now, the first constraint is in there. In fact, that first constraint was the total cost. How do we know that? Well, if you go to this next section, when they were listing the constraint, they indicated that the budget limit, the word limit means that, what symbol is that? You can type for me the symbol for the limit, the budget limit. What symbol is the limit? What mathematical symbol is that limit? Because you got to know that to be able to put that in. Write it down, and that's it. Okay, let me see the person who initiated this. Okay, and that's precious. So that is less than or equal to. Okay, so your situation is going to be writing that budget constraint or that budget limit. We call it constraint 1. Okay, so you're going to write that, and that is what 15,000. So it's going to cost you 15,000 to produce the number of TV commercials. So it's going to be 15,000 x1 plus 6,000 x2 plus 4,000. That is how it's going to be. So let's write that constraint down. So the first constraint, which is the budget constraint, let me call it C1. This budget constraint is 15,000 x1. Okay, 15,000 x1 plus 6,000 x2 and then plus 4,000 x3. And according to this, it should be less than or equal to 100,000. This is the budget constraint. Now the second constraint is C2. Let's call it C2, constraint 2. Now let's go to the preamble and you can appreciate the next constraint. Okay, it says that the TV station has time available for 4 commercials. Time available for 4 commercials. And we know that the word available is always what? Less than or equal to. 4 commercials means that it should be on the right hand side of the less than or equal to. So what is going to represent this TV commercial? How would you write it? TV commercial has a time available for 4 commercials. TV station has a time available. How would you have written it? If I were to type it, how would you have written it? Perfect. Most of you are getting it correct. Okay. Most of you are getting it correct. So this is going to be x1 less than or equal to the 4. And of course, that is the same principle that goes with the others. So if you look at the others, radio commercial is what? 10. So radio station has a time available for 10. Newspaper has space. You see, that one is not time, but space available for 7. Okay. So you're going to write all of them like that. So there's a limitation of what? X2 is less or equal to 7. Oh, that's rather the 10. Yeah, that's the 10. X2 is less or equal to 10. And then X3 is less or equal to 7. There's a final constraint there. Watch it. The final constraint says that the advertising agency has time and staff available for producing no more than total of 15 commercials. End or add. That is a plus sign. End or add. So you have what? No more than. The word no more than means what? What symbol is no more than? You got to understand that symbol. What is no more than? What is the symbol of no more than? That's correct answer. That is the correct answers I'm getting. That is again less than or equal to. So once again, it says that put all of them together. You see, no more than. So the number of adverts you can do for all of them combined is 15 or less. You can't go beyond that. You can't go beyond that. How do you write that? I'm sure some of you have gotten it. Okay, that is what? X1 plus X2 plus X3. That's the total number of adverts. Should be no more than 15. And of course, your non-negativity constraint must come right there. So this is the constraint that you have formulated. And this is how it has to be. It looks very, a little bit complex. But look, it's not complex because you brought it today. When you look at it from a mathematical point of view, it might look complex. But we know where we came from. And where we came from wasn't complex at all. If you are lost at any point, let me know. Okay. Now that we've been able to do the formulation, we are ready to put it into Excel. Okay. So at this stage, we just don't look anywhere. We just go straight to look at our Excel. So let's go to our Excel, and this is our Excel. Anytime you are doing the formulation, you must have your complete information on you. And this is the complete information, of course. The Z-max is not shown here, but we know the value of the Z-max. So we'll come back to that. That Z-max is also in the Excel, in the formulation here. So this is the formulation that we have. Okay. All right. So we are going to put this one there. But before then, we need to, like I always tell you, what you want to do is to always have the name of the company. Okay. And in this context, This company is called BSCD. So you write it there, BSCD or DC. That's the name of the company. Then on the right, you write let's continue. The next thing you want to be able to do is to write the names of the decision variables. And we can write them as x1, x2, but this one I want to use the actual names. So the first one is TV, the next one is radio, the next one is newspaper. I'm just using these. And then you have the next column, which is Z. That's what you want to do. Then below that, under the name of the company, write objective coefficient. Objective coefficient. And objective coefficient, we know them from the formulation. We know them, if you can remember. Okay. We know that it was Z max equal to 20,000 x1 plus 12,000 x2 plus 9,000 x3. So we are going to put those values in there in the Excel. Okay. So the next first one is 20,000, then 12,000, then 9,000. So you put them there for now. Then just directly below that in the first column, you write DV for the decision variables. Right now, we don't know the values of the decision variables, so we initialize the values to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. We can now write the Z formula just below the Z. And as you know, the Z formula says multiply the 20,000 by the x1. So it is 20,000 times x1 plus 12,000 times x2 plus 9,000 times that. Now you add all, and that is the Z formula. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it there. And you always have to bring equal to sign to indicate that it's a Z formula. So you pick the 20,000, then you do your times. Your times, you can get it from the shift and start. Okay. And then you collect your x1. The moment you collect your s1, you do fn f4 key. And I went through this many times the other time. Okay. Then you do plus, you pick the 12,000, you do times, then you collect the x2, which is 0. Then you press your fn f4. Then you do plus, you collect the 9,000 times, you do star times x3. Once you select the x3, you do fn f4. Some of you backstage me, and I explain the fn f4 symbol, how to get it for you. Once you are done with that, you click enter. Everything turns to 0, but it's a formula, so we'll get to know the actual value. These are decision variables which are in green color. Okay, and these green decision variables will also change. In the Excel, we indicated that they are called changing cell. The next thing is to write the word constraints. Of course, all of these are cosmetics. Okay, it's just to beautify and know where you're going. And then under the constraint, okay, just below the Z, okay, 2 steps below the Z, you write the left-hand side of the constraint, you write the sign, and you write the right-hand side of the constraint. And you might remember that the left-hand side of the constraint is the available. The right-hand side, sorry, the left-hand side of the constraint is the usage, and the right-hand side of the constraint is available. Okay, under minimization. Under minimization, once again, this is a usage and this is a resource requirement or requirement. Sometimes minimum requirement. Now, the sign. Now, the names of the constraint on the first column, we don't know the full names of the constraints. Some of them are mixed. Of course, you know one of the names of the constraint, which is the budget constraint. But I will not use names. I'll use C1 for the first constraint, C2 for the second constraint, C3 for the next one, C4, okay, and the final one, C5. So these are constraints 1 all the way to 5. Then the symbol. Go check the formulation. check the formulation, you see that each one has got less than or equal to, less than or equal to, less than or equal to, less than or equal to. And so in the symbol section, you will write less than or equal to for all of them. Now, how do you do that? Do the less than first, and then do the equal to second for the first one, and then drag it all the way down to populate the others until you get all 5 constraints having less than or equal to. Now we are in need of the right hand side. Now go and check the formulation. You see, each time I'm checking the formulation. The first one, the right hand side is 100,000. The next one, the right hand side is 4, then 10, then 7, then 15. So that's how you are going to also put them there in the Excel. So the right hand side, the first one is 100,000, then 4, then 10, then 7, then 15. So that is how you do it for all of these constraints. So you've been able to do the right hand side of the constraint. Now what about the left hand side? Go back to the equation and check your equation again. You see, the equation says that for the budget constraint C1, the constraint 1, the first number 15,000 is multiplying x1, the 6,000 is multiplying x2, and then the 4,000 is multiplying x3. Now x1, x2, and then x3. If you look at the column here, the B column is the x1, the C column is the x2, and the D column is the x3. And so I can put those numbers down there for each one of them, provided there's a number for them. So when you look at the constraint, there's a number for the x1 here, there's a number for the x2, there's a number for the x3. And what are the numbers? 15,000, 6,000, 4,000. You write them there. 15,000, 6,000, and then 4,000. So they are all nicely collected, each one under its upper level decision variable name. And that's what we are going to do for all the others. For constraint 2, let's go and check constraint 2. Constraint 2, you can see that x1 has a value. What is the value in front of x1? X1 has a value there. X2 is not there. X3 is not there. X4 is not there. What is the value of x1? And Maclear says 1. That's the correct answer. Okay, it is 1. So we put that 1 in the Excel. So that is only for x1. The others don't have. Check the other ones. The next constraint, when you look at the next constraint, you can see that only x2 has a number 1. Then the next constraint, only x3 has a number 1. Then the last constraint, all of them have got numbers in front of it, which is 1, 1, 1. And we'll put all of that in the Excel. So this one is 1, this one is 1, and then the last one, all of them have 1, 1, 1 in front of it. You've been able to finish. Now this column here, which is the column, is the where you're going to apply the dollar symbol formula. Now we'll put the dollar symbol here. Okay, and you can see that the dollar symbol was always ignited. The F and F4 was always ignited only after selecting the decision variable. So we can copy this formula. Okay, Control C to copy, or do your normal right click copy. Okay, some people like that. The true mathematical formulators, they don't do copy and paste, but you can do Control C to copy. And when you come down here, Control V to paste, or you can use a normal paste. Once you paste it, click on the bottom of that cell, just on the right bottom right of that cell. The cursor will turn to plus. Bottom right of that cell, the cursor will turn to right, to plus. Then click and drag it. So what it means is that you are collecting the formula, all of them, into the respective section. And all of them are going to have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, just like the z value formula of 0. But mind you, when you click on each one of them, you see it is being multiplied by the decision variables above. Enter, click on the next one, you see that it is picking the thing but multiplying them by the zero, zero, zeros. Okay, the decision variable. When you look at the last one, it's also multiplying it by the 0, 0, 0, which is the last one. You are done. You have done your formulation in Excel. You are sorted. Now, you have to get this thing into the solver to solve it for you. How do you do that? Click on Data tab. Click on the Data tab. On the far right, you should see Solver. If you don't see Solver, watch my other videos, okay, the last 2 videos, and I've shown clearly, in fact, there are 4 videos, I've shown clearly how to get the solver invoked. So click on Solver. A pop-up will come, which is known as the Solver Parameter Dialog Box. Okay, the Solver Parameter Dialog Box. So you do that. And then the first thing that comes in there is the set objective. Whatever is there, delete it. Delete it. Set objective. The set objective is your Z value. And the formula for the Z value is down here. So just select that cell. Collect that cell. And you see that when you do that, E2 will be collected into the set objective. The set objective is our objective function. And what are we doing with that objective function? Minimize or maximize? It's maximize. It's maximize. So you select max. Normally that is even the default. But note that sometimes you'll be selecting minimize, min. So if min is already selected, you select max. Then you click the space, which is known as by changing variable cells. That space by changing variable cell is the decision variables. Why is it changing? It is changing because right now, as you can see, we have initialized their values to what? 0. Because we don't know their values yet. But we're going to formulate and then run the model. And the model will tell us how much of the decision variables we should produce. Or in our context here, how many number of the commercials or the advertisement that we need to generate. So you're going to collect all of these 3 decision variables into that by changing cell. So you click and drag all of them, and they are collected into the by changing cell, which you will see as B3 to D3. You are done. Click the next space, which is the subject to the constraint. That is the constraint section. Okay. Now, normally, the last one that we did, you might remember that for each constraint, we will put in the signs. Now, for this subject to constraint, you have to add them one by one. If the signs are different. Okay. Now, click on the add. Click on the add. And when you click on the add, the cursor will be blinking on the left-hand side, which is called in Excel cell reference. And then there is a symbol. There's a little arrow near the symbol which is less than or equal to. Click on that arrow, and all other symbols are also given. So if you happen to get greater than or equal to in your symbols, you select that. Now, if you look at our own, all of them are less than or equal to. So we're going to stick with one symbol less or equal to. So we will collect, because they all have the same symbol, okay, we'll collect all of the zeros into the cell reference. Click the cell reference section, the left-hand side, and come and collect all of these zeros. Okay, click and drag all of them into that cell reference, and you see E5 to E9. As for the symbol, which is less than or equal to, we already have it as default. Then on the constraint is the right-hand side values. The Excel calls it constraint. So the right-hand side values, you're also going to click and drag all the right-hand side values into the right-hand side constraint. Now, the reason why we are selecting all of them, but not one by one, is because they all have the same symbol. But if they didn't have the same symbol, you have to deal with those that have less than or equal to, then deal with those that are equal to, deal with those that have integer or binary, deal with those that have greater than or equal to. And each time you're going to deal with them one by one, you click add, you click add, you click add. But in this context, they all have less than or equal to, so we choose OK. The moment you choose OK, Excel will bring you back to where you were before. And that where you were before was a solver parameter dialog box. The non-negativity constraint is always ticked, as we know. Make unconstrained variables non-negative. Then you select the solving method, which we always say is the simplex method. Once you do that, you click solve. And hopefully Excel will tell you that an optimality condition, the solution has been found. Once that boom sound comes, you read the result. It says solver found the solution. All constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. You are good to go. At this stage, you click on the sensitivity report. Okay. You have answer report, you have limit, and you have sensitivity. Ours is to use sensitivity. So right-click the answer and the limit so that only the sensitivity is shown as blue. So you are going to click OK. And when you click OK, at the bottom, you see I have the name of my sheet as sheet 1. At the bottom, you have the name of your sheet. Another sheet to be created called sensitivity report 1. The moment you click OK. So let's click OK and watch down there. You see a new sheet, sensitivity report 1, has been given to us. Now this is the most important thing in your form. So what is going to happen is that we are now going to answer some questions which are based on this sensitivity report. Normally I can ask you over 20 questions based on this sensitivity report. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you formulate the linear programming model and then do it also in Excel and eventually get your sensitivity report. We'll now come back to come and look at the questions that are allotted to this sensitivity report.